Okay, so a few things about the church camera that you need to know before we get started is it has the capabilities of recording onto an internal hard drive. It's got 64 gigs. Or you can record it onto an SD drive, an SD card. So let's say that you forget to put an SD card in the camera, you still have the capability of recording whatever you're trying to record for that day. And that's one reason why I love the camera, is it has that backup capability. So just remember that. There's also ways, let's say that you transfer, or let's say that you shoot the sermon, you want to transfer it to an SD card. You would put the SD card in the B slot, and then you would go to the play function on the camera, and there's an option in there that says edit, and it would show you that you can transfer whatever footage you want onto the SD card as long as it's in the B slot. And also the actual compartment where the card goes has to be shut. There's a little door, it won't recognize it if it's not shut. So to get started in importing from the camera to your computer, or an SD card to the computer, let's say that you did decide you don't want to take the camera home, and so you transferred it to an SD card before you left, then you would come home, you would put the SD card in your computer. This will work for either way. Either plug the camera into the computer or the SD card. If you plug the camera in, you're going to plug the USB cable into the USB port on the camera, which you'll see in this video. Then plug it into the USB 3 slot on the computer, which is on the right side. It's the USB slot that's on the right. There might be one or two. I don't really think it matters. Just play around with it. But plug the camera into the computer first. Then once you've done that, open up the program, Adobe Premiere Elements. And then turn on the camera. So turn on the camera, open it up, it'll give you an option that'll say all or internal footage, internal drive, memory card A, memory card B, I'm not sure, and I think it gives you an option that says all. I normally just do all, so if you click on the all, it's a touch screen. Click on the all, it'll allow you access to the camera. And that's the first step, plugging the camera in and getting it ready to import. Then it'll show something on the screen that says something like do not unplug while using or whatnot, something like that. In order to get to that screen, once you open up the camera, it's just going to be on the video portion where it wants you to record. Just hit the play button that's on the side of the camera. When you flip open the screen, there'll be a play button. Push the play button, it'll bring up that menu that I mentioned, all internal, memory card A, memory card B, and then click on all, and then you're good to go. And just leave the camera there. Make sure that it's charged or it's plugged in, otherwise it's not going to work. Alright, so let's get into importing the footage. Okay, so I have an SD card plugged into my computer. I'm going to imagine that this is the camera. Here is the program. Once you click on it and you open it up, I've already got it open, but it might show this. You just click on Video Editor, and it'll bring up the program. I've already got it up. You want to make sure that it's on Expert. There's all these other options for editing. Expert works the best for me. So now let's work on getting our footage into our program. So I'm going to go to Add Media. And you can do this a couple of different ways. Add Media here. You can do it here. But we're going to come over here. We're going to go Videos from Cameras and Devices. If you're importing it from an SD card that has been shot from a camera, more than likely you're going to have to go through this process. Now, for some reason, if you use DSLR camera, which is like a still camera, a nice one, a Canon or a Nikon that shoots video, they will allow you to import it onto your computer. You could just transfer it right away. You don't have to go through the program. Then you would just add it into the program later. That might be too confusing at this point. So let's just stick with what we're doing now. Okay, so imagine that I've got the camera from the church plugged in. Up here will tell me what the source is. For you, it will say Canon or whatnot. If you've got your camera and an SD card in, it'll give you multiple options. Right now, this is my card. So this is what I have here. Now, this is where the program gets a little weird, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you know where you're saving it. So click on the folder. And I always had, let's see, videos. Let's just say new folder, test, sermon. Open that folder, test sermon, select folder. Okay. Now, I don't know why it does this, but this is something I had to figure out, so you're welcome. You're going to click on presets and click on file name. That's all you have to do. Then come down here and click get media. It's going to take probably about 15 minutes for the footage for each Sunday, because it's quite a long video. It's about an hour if you record the whole service. So it's going to say this, copying files, copying media. I'm going to cancel just for now. Well, there it goes. I'll let it do its thing. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and cancel it, just because we're not actually using that footage. Alright, so if I did allow it to come up, it would pop up in here, the footage. That's where it would show the sermon video. For some reason, it splits up the clips when imported into Premiere. So you're going to have to do a little bit of editing. I'm going to use a past sermon that I still have for some reason. So if you want to import footage, not from a camera, but let's say you have footage on your computer that you want to use, go to Add Media, Files, and Folders. And then I'm going to find, let's see, video, main video. This is one that I just still had for some reason. Alright, so adding media. It's going to take a second to add the media, obviously. This one I'm not going to cancel because I actually want to use the footage. Boop. Alright. Let's imagine that this is the regular sermon. Since you're recording the whole service, if you decide to stop recording the whole service, because really we don't use it, I think it's wise to record it in case something happens, in case something funny or really serious, because Reverend Grubbs will sometimes make comments before the prayer. Those are always good to get. And I think it would be great to start uploading the children's moments. That's one thing that I wanted to do. I just never got around to. So, you know, however you do it. I don't know why, but it splits up the clips into about 20-minute little clips. So let's imagine that this is, and you'll actually see, so you can preview the footage. You can double click on it. It'll give you this little window here. You can enlarge the window. Click on it. This is the beginning of one service. Here's your cursor, and this will show you where you can begin and all this. Alright, so where I would begin, and actually this was right, we don't actually have the sermon on this video, but really where it starts is at the very end of this clip. is where Reverend Johnson will read the scripture. And so you start with the scripture, and then as you can see here, so let's imagine here that Reverend Johnson is reading the scripture. If you hit the I key, that makes an end point. All right, so if you look, all this is gray. That means that none of this footage is going to be used when you put it on your timeline. All right, so here's my end point and here's my out point. So I can exit out of this. It's going to keep that end point, out point. I take this, I click on it, I drag it down here. It's now on my timeline. Okay, so that's where it was. So imagine that this is all in the Reverend Johnson, you know. So here we go. Let's say that we want to start right here. As you see, I'm scrolling along. I'm clicking on it, and then I can move it. All right, there's a couple of ways to cut a clip. So let's say that we just want Reverend Grubbs doing his little speech here. If you hit the space bar, it'll play it. So I just hit the space bar. I know you can't see that. So I'm going to let it play for a second. He's about to talk. So if you hit the space bar again, that'll pause it. If you go down to where you see these little scissors, you can click on it. It'll cut the clip. Now another way of cutting the clip is if you go up to, I believe it's Tools, or maybe it's Window, Help, Keyboard Shortcuts. If you go to Keyboard Shortcuts, this will give you an option of setting what I call, or what is called, hotkeys. Let me have a sip of coffee. A little product placement here. And here you can search for, I would just put like hotkeys. And this will teach you how to get to the hotkeys. I don't remember. Let's see. Yeah, I actually don't remember off the top of my head. But you can get it to the point where you could hit B for blade to cut it. But I believe that when you start editing, it's not going to let you do that right away. So you got to figure out how to make the hotkey. All right, so let's go back. We've cut the clip. If we click on this one, when it highlights it light blue, that means that it's highlighted. I hit delete. Within this space, I can right click, delete, and close gap. It'll bring your footage back to the front of the timeline. Then you can click up here. This will allow you to go. As you can see up here, this is the end of the footage. So a few things in order to clean it up. Remember that you're going to have to piece together the scripture into the rest of his sermon. So the scripture and the beginning of his sermon are going to be on one, at the end of one clip. And then the rest of his sermon is going to be at the beginning of another clip. So let's imagine, let's do this again. All right, so as you see here, I've got my in and out point. Let's say that I actually want, since this is already on the timeline, let's say that I want the stuff before it. Okay? So I'll hit O for out, and then I'll just go a little bit further back. I for in. Click on the clip, bring it out, and you're not going to do this exactly the way. Now let's say that it's too big in order to, you can't just insert it in here because it'll mess this up. Okay? So your favorite hotkey, this one will already be there. Control Z is undo. So let's say that I bring this down, it's too big. I can actually leave it right here. I can drag this over here, and then I can put that there, and then bring it there, and it'll snap to it. That's what that's called, snap. See how it just kind of pops right in there? Alright, so I don't actually want this to be that big of a clip. So I'm going to come over here and cut. click on it to highlight, delete, right click, delete, and close cap. Okay, so here's the clip that I'm going to upload. What I always do in the beginning is I put a fade in. So let's go over, these are your transitions. It's that little apply transitions. Cross dissolve. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Click back on your clip, right click, go over to fade, and fade in audio and video. And that will fade in. That'll fade in the audio and the video. Cross dissolve, place it here. You can also put an audio cross dissolve. So if you go over to audio, it's called constant gain. Put it on the audio portion of it. And when you play, it'll give you a nice transition. Now to end the clip, come over here. You can just click on this one, hit right click, fade, fade out, audio and video.
Can y'all hear it?
There you go. Alright, so I've given you a brief little tutorial on how to get the footage into the computer and then how to edit it. You're not going to have to do a ton of editing. I've given you basically the tools that you need. A few other things just to be aware of. You can come over here. You can stretch the timeline out so that you can do some quicker or some more precise edits. You see how it makes it bigger, longer, or whatnot. You can actually edit it down to the frame, which is nice if you need to. You won't have to get creative very often, but there are a few times where the beginning of one service, so remember you're importing 2 services each week, and sometimes the beginning of one service will be cut short, like someone didn't start the recording in time. And what I would do is I would just take the scripture from the previous or whatever from the other one and put it at the beginning of it, and I might put a little note in the description of the video just saying, please be aware that the scripture in the 11 o'clock video is actually a scripture from the 8:45 due to technical difficulties. Or you can just leave it alone, people might not even notice. But there will be at least one person that says, wait, that looks like the same it's the same scripture, it doesn't really matter as long as it looks good. There you go. Alright, let's get to exporting the footage. Now there's a couple of ways to do this. If you go up to File, Export and Share. If you want to keep copies of it of your video on the computer, there's a couple ways to do it. Quick export's just a really quick and dirty, just so you've got it. If you do devices, you can choose computer, TV, mobile, custom. What I would always do is just do the HD 1080 1920 by 1080, and then name your project. So just put like test, and then put where you want it to go, and then you'd hit save, and it'll export the video. See it doing that. That way you can have it on the computer. But I'm going to cancel that just to save some space. Alright, but what you guys are going to be doing is you're going to be uploading it to Vimeo. So you're going to go up here to Online and click on Vimeo. HD 720. If you hit Begin Share, for the first time it's going to ask you to set up all of it. So Adobe Premiere Elements requires your authorization to upload media to Vimeo account. You go to Authorize, and I actually still have it. So click Allow. Thank you. Now you can close out of that, come back here, complete authorization, and you would just put test sermon or whatever the title is, test sermon, Premiere Elements. Next, who can watch this video? Put anyone. I always put to download the video. I think it's nice if people want to download it, they can. So hit upload. And this is just a very quick, upload just to show you how it's done.